The day began like any other for Ethan Caldwell. A sharp autumn chill lingered in the air, the sun casting faint golden streaks across the quiet streets of Willow Creek, a small town nestled in the rolling hills of Oregon. It was October 17th, 2024, and Ethan had parked his Harley outside a diner on 4th Avenue, its chrome glinting under the morning light. He stepped inside, the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee pulling him in like an old friend. His plan was simple. Grab a cup, take a slow ride along the coastal highway, let the wind untangle the knots in his mind. But as he stepped back onto the sidewalk, steam curling from the paper cup in his gloved hand, something caught his eye across the street. A man paced in front of a small bookstore, his movements jagged, like a wire pulled too tight. His eyes kept darting toward a little girl standing by the shop window, her yellow raincoat glowing against the glass. She couldn't have been older than 7, clutching a green balloon that bobbed gently in the breeze. Inside the store, a woman, likely her mother, was at the counter, fumbling with her wallet. The man's jacket shifted, and Ethan's heart stopped. The glint of metal was unmistakable, burned into his memory from years in combat zones. Gun. The word hit him like a shockwave. His coffee cup hit the pavement, brown liquid splashing across his boots as he broke into a sprint. The gunshot cracked through the morning air, sharp and final, echoing off the brick buildings. The balloon slipped from the girl's fingers, floating skyward as time seemed to slow. Ethan reached her in a single, desperate lunge, shoving her behind him just as the bullet tore into his side. Pain exploded, white-hot and relentless, stealing his breath. He stumbled, one hand pressed against the wound, the other braced on the ground to keep from collapsing. "You okay?" His voice was a hoarse rasp, barely audible over the ringing in his ears. The girl's wide, terrified eyes met his, her small frame trembling but unharmed. Sirens wailed in the distance, cutting through the chaos of shouting bystanders. The shooter was gone, vanished into the maze of alleys that crisscrossed Willow Creek. Ethan's vision blurred as a woman burst from the bookstore, her face pale with panic, scooping the girl into her arms. Paramedics arrived, their voices clipped and urgent. GSW to the lower abdomen. Pulse erratic. BP's dropping. Move him. They lifted him onto a stretcher, the world tilting with every step toward the ambulance. As the doors slammed shut, Ethan caught a glimpse of his vest, sliced open by medical shears, revealing the patched skull and crossed pistons on the back. The paramedic's eyes flicked to it, a mix of curiosity and wariness, but Ethan was too far gone to care. Pain pulsed through him, and the faint roar of a single Harley engine hummed somewhere nearby, a low note that felt like it meant something. Then the darkness closed in. Word spread fast, not through news reports or police scanners, but through the invisible threads that tied Ethan's world together. In a dive bar on the edge of town, Lucas Hayes was polishing his bike's gas tank when a young rider burst through the door, breathless. "Lucas, it's Ethan. He's down. Took a bullet downtown." Lucas didn't ask questions. He tossed the rag aside, grabbed his keys, and barked, "Round up the crew. Tell him it's for Ethan." 20 miles away, at a truck stop off Route 101, Caleb Morrow was filling his tank when the cashier leaned out. "You know an Ethan Caldwell? Heard he got shot protecting some kid." Caleb's jaw tightened. He didn't wait for details, just swung onto his bike and roared to life, the engine's growl shaking the gravel lot. The news traveled like wildfire, carried by voices in gas stations, diners, and backyards. Ethan had stepped in front of a bullet for a stranger's kid. That was enough. Engines fired up across the county, from rural barns to city garages. Men in weathered leather cut their conversations short, kicked up their stands, and hit the road. Lucas led the pack, his headlights slicing through the coastal fog. Behind him, more bikes joined, first Caleb, then others, their lights flickering like stars in his mirrors. The sound grew, a deep, living rumble that rolled across the hills, drawing curious stares from passers-by. They rode tight, disciplined, not a parade but a force with a purpose, bound for Willow Creek Medical Center. The hospital wasn't ready for what was coming. The waiting room, built for sprained ankles and late-night fevers, felt small as the first rider walked in. Tall, grizzled, with a helmet under his arm, he scanned the room and took a spot by the ER doors. No words, just presence. 5 minutes later, 2 more joined him, their boots heavy on the tile. Outside, the low hum of idling Harleys began to build. Nurses glanced up, patients shifted in their seats, and the security guard's hand hovered near his radio. By the time the clock ticked past noon, the waiting room held a dozen riders, their leather vests a quiet wall of solidarity. The glass doors kept sliding open, letting in more 6 at a time, then 8. They didn't shout or swagger. They just stood, eyes fixed on the ER. Outside, the sound became a storm. 80 bikes lined the curb in perfect formation, chrome gleaming under the gray sky. Cars slowed, drivers craning their necks. A man in a pickup shouted, "Who's in trouble?" Lucas, posted by the entrance, didn't turn. No trouble. Family. Inside, a little girl sat on her mother's lap, sipping juice, her eyes darting to the skull patches on the riders' backs. She didn't look scared. If anything, she seemed steadier, as if their presence anchored her. A doctor, stepping out for a break, froze at the sight of the bikes. "This for your guy?" he asked Caleb, who stood with his arms crossed. "For the man who didn't hesitate," Caleb said. The doctor nodded, exhaling a slow plume of smoke. "Hell of a thing." By dusk, rain began to fall, streaking the hospital windows. The riders didn't move. Some pulled on ponchos. Others let the water soak their leathers. They weren't here to make noise or trouble. They were here to stand watch, and they'd stay until Ethan walked out or didn't. Inside, Ethan woke to the sterile glow of hospital lights, the steady beep of a monitor marking time. Pain throbbed in his side, each breath a reminder of the bullet. Memories came in flashes. The gun, the girl's eyes, the pavement rushing up. Then he saw Lucas leaning against the wall, helmet in hand, his face a mix of relief and frustration. "You're a damn fool," Lucas said, voice low. Ethan managed a weak grin. "Kid okay?" Lucas nodded. "Kid's fine. You've got the whole crew outside, you know." Ethan didn't need to ask who. Even through the walls, he heard the faint rumble of engines, steady as a pulse. A nurse bustled in, checking his chart, but a small figure slipped past her. A girl in a yellow raincoat, her dark hair in uneven pigtails, held a crumpled piece of paper. Her mother lingered in the doorway, uncertain but silent. The girl stepped to Ethan's bedside. "This is you," she said, holding up a crayon drawing stick figure on a motorcycle, a smaller figure beside it, her raincoat unmistakable in bright yellow. The bike was neon green, a color no biker would choose, but perfect in her eyes. Ethan took the paper, his calloused fingers brushing the edges. "Got my bike just right," he said, his voice soft. She grinned, a missing tooth making her smile lopsided. "Mom says you're a hero." Ethan shook his head. "Heroes don't have parking tickets." She giggled, but her eyes held his, clear and unguarded, seeing past the patch, the scars, the man others judged. "I think you are," she said, then skipped back to her mother, who gave Ethan a quiet nod before they left. Ethan stared at the drawing, the crayon lines smudging under his thumb. He'd taken hits before, bar fights, bad deals, nights when survival was a gamble, but none had left him holding a piece of paper that felt like it weighed more than his bike. Lucas spoke from the doorway. "Kid's not wrong." Ethan didn't reply, just kept staring at the drawing as the nurse taped it to the wall. Outside, the rain tapped the windows, but the gleam of chrome remained, a quiet promise under the parking lot lights. Some of those bikes belonged to men he hadn't seen in years, others to brothers he'd ridden with since his first mile. They were all here for him, and that truth settled deeper than the pain. That night, Lucas and Caleb stepped in, rain-soaked, and carrying coffee and a stack of worn biker magazines. "Keep you from going stir-crazy," Caleb said, dropping the pile with a thud. Ethan eyed the coffee. "You breaking to mess up my sleep?" Lucas set a cup within reach. "We're here in shifts. Someone's always going to be here." Ethan started to protest, but Lucas cut him off. "You'd be out there for any of us. Don't act like you wouldn't." The room fell quiet, the kind of silence that didn't need filling. Caleb flipped through a magazine, pointing out a gaudy custom chopper Ethan would never ride. Lucas sipped his coffee, glancing at the monitors like they might betray Ethan if he didn't watch them. Outside, the engines hummed, a steady reminder of the men standing in the rain. By the third day, the rain had cleared, and Ethan was moved to a recovery ward. The riders kept coming, their presence a constant in the halls. A sheriff named Clara Holt visited, her boots clicking on the tile. She held her hat, her eyes scanning the coffee cups, the drawing, the magazines. Doc says you'll make it, she said. Ethan nodded. Seems so. She glanced out the window at the bikes. Don't love having 100 riders camped outside my hospital. Makes folks jumpy. Ethan met her gaze. They're not here for them. Clara's mouth twitched. No, they're here for you. That girl's dad split years ago. You might be the first man she's seen stand up for her. Ethan didn't know what to say, so he stayed quiet. Clara tipped her hat and left, her words lingering. The day Ethan stood, pain seared through him, but he gripped the bed rail and Lucas's arm, taking one step, then another. When he reached the window, he saw the bikes stretching down the street, Caleb among them, catching his eye and nodding. No fuss, just a look that said, "We're here." The day he was discharged, the hospital buzzed with anticipation. Lucas carried his bag, Caleb flanked the door. Ethan laced his boots, each movement a small triumph. Outside, his Harley waited, polished to a mirror shine, new grips gleaming. As he stepped into the sunlight, a small figure darted forward. Sophie, the girl in the yellow raincoat. She hugged him gently, mindful of his stitches, her smile bright. "You didn't forget," she said. "Told you I wouldn't," Ethan replied. Her mother mouthed a silent thank you. Sophie tilted her head. "When you're better, can I ride on your motorcycle?" Ethan crouched, wincing. "You'd need a helmet." "I'll get one," she said firmly. He smiled. "We'll see." Lucas handed him his helmet. "You're leading." Ethan shook his head, started the bike, let the engine roar once, then shut it down. This wasn't about the ride today. It was about walking out alive. The convoy rolled out, 80 bikes in perfect sync, their thunder shaking the town. Ethan took the long route, 20 miles of winding roads and open fields, the wind sharp against his face. Sophie and her mother watched from a hill, waving until the last bike faded from view. 2 weeks later, Ethan rode into a park on the edge of town, the air warm with early spring. A new bench sat under an oak, its plaque reading, "For the man who didn't hesitate." On it was Sophie's drawing, laminated and glowing in the sunlight. Ethan sat, the wood warm under him, and let the moment sink in. People passed, some reading the plaque, others nodding quietly. He didn't say who he was. It didn't matter. From his saddlebag, he pulled Sophie's drawing and her mother's note, tucking them away like keepsakes. The Harley roared to life, and he hit the road, the horizon wide and golden. Another moment would come, maybe not a bullet, maybe not a child, but when it did, he'd move without thinking, because some choices are the only ones worth living with. What would you have done in Ethan's place? Run toward the danger or freeze? Should the riders have stayed, turning the hospital into a fortress, or was their presence too much for a quiet town? Would you let a kid like Sophie ride on your bike, or is that a line you wouldn't cross? Drop your thoughts below, hit like, and subscribe for more stories that hit hard and leave you thinking.